the official newspaper of the Borough of Belmar and the Asbury Park Press on December 19, 2018, and notice of this meeting was posted on the bulletin board of the municipal building.
Thank you, April. If everybody could join me in the flag salute of our great nation. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If everybody could just remain standing for a moment, just a moment of silence for our troops, their families, and all of our first responders. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move right in the workshop session. I've asked Mr. Avakian, our engineer, to come here tonight, and he is just going to explain a little bit of what has taken place in the past 10 months and what is going to be needed in the very near future. So, if Mr. Avakian.
My pleasure. Thank you, Mayor, council members, and public. I sat here on January 15th and we discussed in a workshop session some of the hurdles that we had ahead of us, some of the projects that we had to undertake, and some of the grants that we had received as a borough that hadn't been utilized, that had a time extension to them or a time life to them, that were going to be lost if we didn't take immediate action. And we've done a lot in a relatively short period of time, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit, but also talk about some of the future goals that we have for a few long-range projects in the borough. First, with streets and roads and infrastructure, the borough received a grant from the Department of Transportation for improvements to 12th Avenue. And we immediately had to undertake that project because the grant was going to be lost by May of this year. So early on, after our January meeting, we started our design, which had to go to DOT, Department of Transportation, to get approval to go out to bid. So we were out to bid in March and April, started construction over the summer, and got the contract approved, so we didn't lose the grant, and started construction. So 12th Avenue between Route 35 and Main Street was completed before school opened. We did the work in the summertime intentionally to avoid conflicts with the school, and we did some unique things there. There were very poor drainage conditions there. I know you have kids walking to school and you have public using the sidewalks and the street, and so we regraded the road slightly to create a crown so that the water flowed to the gutter, so it didn't pond in areas where pedestrians were crossing the street. We also did some work up toward Route 35 where we uncovered infrastructure that had been paved over, where we had access to sanitary sewers and storm drainage that was not available. So it was a great project, but it's going to move forward. We have grants available for 2 additional phases. Main Street to B Street is at the Department of Transportation now. Hopefully go out to bid before the end of the year and start construction in the springtime. And then B Street to Ocean Avenue is the 3rd phase. And the 3 phases will total over $700,000 in grant money from the DOT that is supplemented by capital improvement funds, but mostly funded by the DOT. So it's a great project. I'll talk in a minute about our intention to evaluate additional roads in the borough and create a long-range road program. A storm drainage problem, actually both sanitary and storm, was undertaken. We talked about it in January, and you all know about it, at Route 35 between K and L Streets. It's the municipal infrastructure, storm and sanitary, floods there, has sanitary problems, and the beach closures were in effect for years. We evaluated the area, we worked with our storm and sanitary consultant, and we found 2 things. Subsequent to Superstorm Sandy, the sanitary sewer filled with sand and was not functioning efficiently. And at the same time, we had 2 sewage pump stations that were failing and not working properly. We immediately resolved those issues. We cleaned the sanitary sewer, fixed it, and rehabilitated the 2 pump stations. And as you all know, if you just looked at the beach, that beach was fully operational for the entire summer with no beach closures. And I've lived here my entire life, and I don't know when the last time was that I saw that. I can tell you that the DEP is monitoring us very closely, and we're very, very happy that that occurred, because they don't like beach closures, and they don't like it when you have elevated levels of bacteria that affect public access to our water bodies.
If I could add to that, Mr. Vakin.
Yes.
Also, the past week, we had the high tides, where we had the northeastern storm come in, where we flooded Highway 35, part of the marine basins. If you drove down there, the boats were higher almost at the walkway. And I'm happy to report with Director Campbell from the Department of Public Works went down, sent his crew down there. In the past, we would have feces and toilet paper, the entire storm system flooded out. It was bone dry. So the money was well spent, and I applaud the Department of Public Works and our engineers, because last year this time we would have had serious problems with the infiltration of feces and toilet paper into the river. That's been remediated, so I applaud the efforts of everybody involved.
Thank you. Probably a good time to say something that we kind of take for granted. We work for the borough, we work for you. We're employed by the mayor and council, and we work directly with the administrator. On a daily basis, we talk and we discuss projects. We don't do anything without talking it through first and trying to determine the impact of the improvements, if it's a good thing, and the effect of those improvements. And the next project I want to talk about was something we inherited, but it was a street lighting along Main Street. And you all know that from 10th Avenue to 5th Avenue, or 5th to 10th, the street lights were installed. They were in conflict with the overhead electrical utility wires, and they were never energized, so you did not have lighting here. On that night we met on January 15th, that was the day that JCP&L mobilized to start the improvement, which was to install new utility poles and raise the wires up to avoid conflict with the metal streetlight standards. That work was completed, and you've seen the lights on for the entirety of the summer, and it's really very pretty. And it looks much better when you don't have that visual conflict between the electrical wires and the streetlights. The streetlights look like they're supposed to. So that was a project that was no cost to the borough. It was all handled by the electric company, and the project's complete. Sewer and water infrastructure. The borough had 2 violation notices early in the year, and they came from DEP. One was for water system, and one was for sewer system. And they were extensive in the number of violations, but they weren't so much in the response that we had to make. We did it quickly. We did it with our water sewer consultant, and I'm happy to say that we're now compliant with all of those items. It was more of a housekeeping and making sure administratively that all the issues for our water distribution system and all the issues for our sanitary sewer system are in compliance with state regulations. So we are. That also occurred with our stormwater management permit, and we do have a permit for stormwater management. All of our inlets, storm drainage pipes that drain either into the Atlantic Ocean or into Shark River or into our lakes and then into those water bodies are permitted by the state of New Jersey. That permit requires an annual report to be submitted by May of each year, and it hadn't been submitted by the borough. So we took it upon ourselves to submit the delinquent ones, and we also did the ones for this year that are current. We work with Mike Campbell in getting the information together. Everything is now up to date and efficient, and the state's happy when they see things like that because they don't have to call Administrator Kirschenbaum on a weekly basis and say, hey, where's this report? We get it into them, and we make sure that we're in good standing with them, so if they have to come and visit, they know what they're looking for. A very important aspect of the borough is municipal facilities, buildings, and structures. You have a beachfront, you have a lot of buildings along the beachfront, you have a municipal building, you have other buildings. The most frustrating one we undertook immediately that was resolved was the 10th Avenue Pavilion. It was sitting there unused, code violations and construction violations that didn't allow the building to be utilized by fire, first aid, and lifeguards. Immediately, we mobilized our crews to get in, DPW, engineering, administration. We were all there. We met with the design crew, with the contractor, and we evaluated the problem, and it was one of rain infiltrating the building during any kind of moderate rain event. We figured out what the cause was, and we had the contractor come back and fix it. And as far as I know it was utilized during the summer. I think it was utilized without issue during any storm event. So that's a project that the borough can be proud of, and I'll talk a little bit in a minute about some other municipal facility plans that we have for the future. With regard to flood hazard mitigation, we undertook a project or a program that the borough's residents should know about. If anyone has flood insurance, there is a federal flood insurance program run through FEMA that's available to all of our residents. And what we did is we met with FEMA and we kept our community rating system program in place, which is a system that FEMA comes in, evaluates our efficiency in compliance with flood hazard regulations. It can be as simple as a flood elevation certificate for a residential home, or keeping all of our ordinances in places and make sure construction that's undertaken meets the federal guidelines. We were given a very high rating, and what that transfers to is it transfers to lower insurance premiums for our residents. So if you're in a flood hazard area designated as such, or if you have flood insurance and you secure it through FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Authority, you will be able to utilize a lower premium rate because of the borough's compliance with the system. It took a lot of work, and the mayor and administrator know because we all met with our planner, our floodplain manager, and FEMA representatives. But it's in place, and the residents should know that it's there. That's a lot. That's a lot that was done in a relatively short period of time, especially when you're doing other normal things that you do as a matter of course, such as attend planning and zoning board meetings, meet with redevelopers, apply to the borough to meet the daily needs of the borough. But there are other things that we can do, and that's really why I wanted to come and why the mayor asked me to come tonight. Several long-range planning projects that the borough should be undertaking that we're working with you on that will end up being cost-efficient and beneficial to the borough in the future. The first is one of my favorites. I am an engineer. I love doing road improvement projects because it affects the public immediately, and things that you take for granted that aren't there when you drive down your road and there's a pothole, when you walk up to your sidewalk or crosswalk and you trip because there's a water valve that's too high or there's a piece of curb that's missing. I dislike that as much as you do. So a road improvement is very personal to me. And one of the things that we can do with the borough is to recommend a long-range road program where we evaluate the condition of each roadway and we prioritize it based on defects to the roadway. It can be the traveled way, it can be curbing, it can be drainage, it can be a variety of things. And we assess those roads and give them a priority rating. And then develop a cost analysis and a long-range plan to do a series of road improvements on an annual basis. It can be supplemented with what we use for the grant monies from the DOT, where we apply on an annual basis to get what they call Transportation Trust Fund monies. And it can be implemented with capital improvement funding. But if the borough doesn't do this and the borough lets the roads deteriorate further, you'll never catch up. So it's a combination of reconstruction, milling and paving, and perhaps we implement for the roads that are not in terribly bad shape, but will be bad in a few years, we do what we call microsurfacing, where you put an asphalt emulsion on top of the road to prevent it from cracking and deteriorating further. But we'll do that. We'll do that together with mayor and council and come back to the public with a plan and a recommendation for improvement. So if you're sitting out there and you say, you know what, my road's really bad, and you tell the mayor and council, and they don't know how to respond, they'll know, because we'll have a priority listing of all the roads that are in bad shape and a recommendation for improvement to those roads. In addition to that, equally as important are municipal buildings and facilities. You all know we have 3 firehouses and a first aid squad. They all have buildings, they all have structures. They're all in a state of some form of deterioration, whether it's the roofs that are leaking and not adequately protecting the building, whether it's the facade, maybe it's access. We have to evaluate those structures and make recommendations for repair. That's something that's been on our list that we just haven't had a chance to really address yet, but you don't want to go through another winter without addressing them and maybe taking care of the important aspects immediately, and then the long-range aspects as a plan to be put in place. The municipality also has this building, this municipal building. We also have public works and water treatment facility. So there are a lot of buildings that the borough is responsible for, working kind of hand in hand on this with public works we'll do an evaluation and we'll complete a plan and make recommendations for improvements to all of them. And we'll have it based on a cost analysis so that it's something that can be phased in and done so you don't really take a tremendously large financial hit instantaneously, but do it progressively over time, just like you would to your home if you had to make home improvements. So that's something we're really looking forward to. The other long-range plan has to do with storm drainage and sanitary sewer facilities. We kind of take them for granted. They're underground, you don't see them. Storm drainage is supposed to take the water away from your streets into the adjoining water bodies. Sometimes when it floods, it doesn't exactly do that efficiently, so we evaluate it. Sometimes the sanitary sewers work well, but you don't see the fact that when it rains a lot and the groundwater gets high, if that groundwater leaks into the sanitary sewer, we call it clean water going in. And if clean water goes into the sewer, that means it's going to SMRSA to be treated just like sewage is, and that means the borough's paying more money for that treatment. We have to stop that. And one way to stop it is implementing improvements, evaluating the infrastructure, looking at manholes, looking at storm drains, looking at interior videos to the sanitary sewers, and making improvements. And one of the ways we can work in a partnership with our residents is by education and telling you that if you have a sump pump in your basement and it pumps out into the street and goes to a storm drain, that's okay. If it goes into a storm drain directly and you don't see where it goes, that's okay. But if it goes into a sanitary sewer, you're pumping that water right to the treatment facility and the borough is paying for it. So if we have 100 residents doing that, it's a tremendous amount of volume of flow and it's a tremendous amount of money. So the educational process is to let everybody know that it's happening. If you know it's there, disconnect it. If we know it's there, implement a program to try to have you disconnected and maybe connected to a storm drainage system so it works more efficiently. So those three long-range projects won't happen overnight, but the road improvement project, we should all be aware of what the roads in the worst condition are and what our plan is to implement improvements. We should all know how we intend to treat our municipal facilities and keep them up to date and keep them ADA compliant and keep them workable, especially for our emergency facilities. And finally, sanitary and storm drainage, long-range planning for those facilities as well. So that's where I'll leave you tonight. There's a lot, but it's something we look forward to working with you and the residents on. And again, it can be a program of interaction where we work with the residents and get input from the residents and use that to implement a long-range plan to everyone's benefit.
Thank you, Mr. Avaki.
Thank you.
Any of the council have questions?
I have one question. First, Mr. Avaki, I want to congratulate you on this great work.
Thank you.
Really, really great. I'm sure the community here feels the same way. It's really when you mentioned about FEMA and the flood insurance rates, I mean, that was a topic that the Environmental Commission at their meeting last week had a great deal to talk about. Can you tell me what's the best community score that you can get from FEMA as far as the rates?
I think, it goes from 1 to 10. I don't think you can get a 1. I think there's a community in California that has a 2. I was talking to someone today about it.
Okay.
I don't know if there's anywhere in New Jersey that does, because
So the lower the number, the better your
the lower the number, the better.
your rates.
Usually you're at a 9 or 10 if you either don't participate or participate
Right.
at a poor level. I think we're at a 6 and we're
We are at
staying at a
6.
6.
We're at 6. Did they make any suggestions, or you have any suggestions about what we could do to make that rate go?
Yes, we absolutely do, and it's a 5-year plan. They were pretty happy with how we presented things to them, but some of the things that we inherited that we recommend being more compliant with are how we address our flood hazard elevation certificates. So that's if a resident is in the flood hazard area and you have to do a flood elevation certificate to make an improvement to your house, there are certain standards that FEMA wants to see on that certificate to make sure you're in compliance, not just get approval. So we can tighten some things up, we can provide additional information on our management and get a better number next time.
Very good, thank you.
And we had August 8th, that's when we had our compliance, or 5-year compliance meeting. We adopted some policies and procedures that actually gave us more points than previous years. So we are on, we are on top of it. And we're hoping for, I was trying to get it to a 5, but it's, we're all working toward those goals, but we know what we have to do and the suggestions that have to be made.
We'll be happy, we have a floodplain manager that worked with us on this, and she'll be happy to come to one of your meetings if you wanted to with the Environmental Commission.
That would be
Talk
great.
about it, and maybe that gets the word out and people start, being more compliant.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
I have a question about that as well. Thank you very much for that report. But early on, after we were sworn in, we had a resident who seems to have extensive knowledge in this area come to some of our council meetings. She's a new member of the Environmental Commission. I believe her name is Krista Sperber. One of the things I think we can be conscious of and probably do a little better moving forward is I know we don't always have the answers, but when we do get the answers, close that loop and get back to people who had those questions. So I would, if it's okay with the rest of the council, if the borough administrator could get back to her, and because it was something she was very concerned about. She hasn't been to a meeting recently, the best of my knowledge, but this is important information. And what's even better about it is, we have a 5-year plan to improve rates further moving forward, which is something, I remember when she was speaking in front of us, was something that she was very interested about. So I think it would be important for us to close that loop with her.
What I'd like to do is, we're waiting for our final grade coming in. It should be a month away. Once I get that, we will actually make it a matter of record on our social media and our website, and then I will contact her personally. That's not a problem.
One other question, and I think I know the answer to this. I just don't want to lose this important aspect of public safety as we move forward in our long-range plans. You talked, Mr. Avakian, about buildings and facilities and the state of deterioration that they've been left in for years, and developing a plan with a cost analysis moving forward so we don't have impact to the taxpayers in repairing this infrastructure. And we need to make sure in that plan as part of it, even if it's an addendum to it, our public safety equipment such as our fire trucks and stuff, which we have 2 pumpers which are in desperate need to be replaced. So we should place those into replacing those vehicles into our long-range plan as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe we can do that at the same time. I think that's a good point, I really do.
Yeah,
At
because
the
it's
same
all.
time, we'll do an addendum of, for each facility of equipment and whatever the needs are that they have in moving forward.
Yeah, that'd be great. And again, we would want to include our volunteers in that process as
Yes.
well. So there's buy-in and everybody's included in that process as it moves forward.
One of the things I learned over the years is that you go a whole lot farther if you utilize the resources that you have available to you, whether it's the police or fire or first aid or public works departments, or you or the residents in developing a project and a way to address a project, so you all buy in and you all understand what the end result is going to be. So if they're all working with you, you're likely to get a better response when you're doing your design and doing our cost analysis. So be glad to do that.
I just want to talk about the Lake Como outflow pipe for a second.
Yes.
So currently, we're in the process of getting the flapper valve replaced.
Yes.
Designed, manufactured, installed. There's what I believe a misconception out there that everybody thinks that the Lake Como outflow pipe is completely disabled. And I'd like you to possibly confirm and kind of put those misconceptions to rest.
I've done this type of work before. I did the outfall at Rec Pond. We used a little different configuration there where we had an actual, it's called a knife gate or a sluice gate, where you actually lower it either electronically or by hand. It's not one that is dependent on the tide, because sometimes things can happen like happened here. So if that valve is not there, it still functions, and it still functions properly. It just can't effectively prevent the tide surge from coming back into the lake in a storm tide event. When the flapper valve is there, and you have a surge of water from the ocean coming back in, like we had last week, that flapper valve would stop that water from coming back into the lake and prevent the lake elevation from rising due to the ocean tide coming back in. So no, it's not something that compromises the project in any way. It's just more efficient when it's functioning properly.
And we do have, Mr. Campbell can discuss what we have to do we have an impending storm or a tidal surge, if you could just let them know the procedure that we go through with DPW.
Sure. There is a guillotine gate, and knife gate, in addition to the flapper valve. The flapper valve just stops it so we don't have to go out there and manually raise or lower the gate. So in a normal rainstorm or even a heavy rainstorm like we just had, we do go out there, we lower the gate, and then we monitor it during the storm. So we have to do it manually. When the flapper valve is there, we no longer have to do that. If there's a high tide coming in, it will stop us, no water from the high tide goes into the lake. Then when it's low tide, it will automatically go out because the gate has been lowered. So again, we can do it. The issue for concern would be if there is a surge, and I dare say Sandy-ish, where something would come up and stop us from getting to the guillotine gate or the knife gate, that's when you have a problem. So again, as long as the storms are manageable like they have been, we're okay. So, and again, we are in the process of getting it repaired. We've made a lot of headway with that through the engineers and negotiating with the companies, through our attorneys and things like that. So again, we're in a better spot, much better spot than we were. And again, we do cover, I don't want anybody to think that because that's broken, a high tide or a rainstorm is going to put water onto the Lake Como area, streets around it, North Boulevard. It's not true. We're able to handle that. Right now, the lake is lowered. We have marks that we put it at pre-storm. We have a winter mark and we have a summer mark. And it's not just us. Spring Lake also monitors theirs through theirs. And we also have the backup where we can always go back to pumps if we had to, because the pipes are still underground. So we do have a lot of tools at our disposal. But again, we're okay. It is working. We just have to monitor it. We have the water department, myself, and one other supervisor that go out. When there's a rain, we meet up there. We discuss the level, we set it, and we're good to go. So we're okay. We'll get there.
Thank you. Thank you, Will.
Thank you, Mr. Varkey.
Thank you.
One little thing that I want to bring up is this building here. When we got here back in January and February, every time it rained, the ceilings would come down, the rugs were moldy, and Mr. Varkey, along with our DPW director, Mr. Campbell, got up on that roof, and they were able to fix it at a very low cost to stop the water infiltration in this building. And I know it's not some of the bigger stuff that he's talked about, but it was a big help for everybody that works in this building. So I want to thank you for that. Thank both of you for that, because that was a major task to clean that up. And we didn't actually have to put a whole new roof on, correct?
That's correct.
If I could add to that, Mayor, I was going to discuss this in the workshop in regards to some things that we have done to try to remediate some of the problems that we've had. Some would have you believe that certain floors were replaced in the complex. There were floors replaced in the municipal complex. The reason was because the roof leaked so bad that we had to cover desks and computers and the floor, for that matter, with plastic covers. The heat didn't work and the air conditioning didn't work. So with our engineers and with our Department of Public Works, I'm able to talk to some of our trades out there, plus what DPW could do. I'm happy to say that at a minimal cost, the roof for the municipal complex has been repaired, and we have not had any leaks to date. We did have to replace the carpet. The carpet was pre-sanding. It was moldy. It was disgusting. It was dirty. It had a trip hazard. So for the safety of our taxpayers and our residents, our visitors, and our employees, the floors were replaced inside of the municipal complex. Number one, it's a health issue, and it looked horrible. As you can see, we still have some more rugs to replace here. So just to go over some of the things that in this workshop that we have completed, besides the leaks, was the air conditioning, a couple units at a time. We were able to budget and get the heat and the air conditioning working in the complex. Just bring you back to January of last year, if you walked into this building at 6 o'clock at night, you couldn't see the building. The lights outside did not work. The lights do work now. We jumped on that right away for the safety of the people walking around the complex. This year alone, this little microphone system, all I heard was people in the audience couldn't hear us. We got a solution for an inexpensive microphone solution, and that's what we wanted to do to make sure we're more efficient. The live streaming of our meetings for people that could not attend. Another plus that we tried to get transparency through live streaming and videotaping our meetings. The other thing that we did was which will address the comprehensive beach management program we adopted with federal and state regulations. If you drive down the beachfront, you see that there's no longer dunes down there, okay? They were not allowed. The beach management, comprehensive beach management program with the borough, with the Department of Public Works, federal and the state partnerships, in a time of emergency, we have to contact them in order to do anything on our beachfront. So I'm happy to say that we have a comprehensive plan in place that we follow. We're no longer in violation of that. So those are some of the things that we got together in our program here from the beginning of the year up until now. And those are the things that we tried to make sure we could accomplish.
Borough Administrator, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Campbell, but we used to have 3 bulldozers that were military surplus, which the Department of Public Works maintained, because we had to build those dunes in the fall and then take them down in the spring. Because we're not allowed to do that, the Department of Public Works identified the fact that we do not need to insure and maintain 3 bulldozers, so they salvaged parts from 2 that were already having mechanical problems that typically were failing, to maintain the 1 piece of equipment that we need in case of an emergency or other projects that may have to come up, and sold the other 2 bulldozers. Because of that FEMA beach management plan mandate, or whatever it is you want to call it, that we had to follow, we reduced the amount of equipment that we had in the Department of Public Works. So I think that's just an example of fiscal responsibility.
And we not only salvaged the part, but we received some funding for those pieces of equipment.
Well, I want to thank you, Mr. Avakian, for
Thank
bringing
you,
this
Mayor.
up to date. And
Appreciate it.
hopefully every couple months, or once a year at least, as we go along, we can bring you back and update the council and the public of what has taken place. So
Certainly.
I do appreciate you coming out tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to petitions. Anyone in the audience have a petition to present to council? All right, seeing none, approval of minutes.
May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the October 1st, 2019 meeting?
Second.
All in favor?
Okay, reports of council. Councilman Crivelli.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Okay, a couple things here. The only committee meeting that occurred since the last council meeting was Harbor Commission, which I was unable to attend, so Councilman Brennan will report on that. There has been some questions raised as to whether or not we are in compliance with the Susco rule, or the beach litigation. And I went around and did some due diligence on that, and confirmed with both the CFO, our attorney, and the borough administrator that the buy-aboard money is properly accounted for and identified in the beach utility, and that we are in compliance with all of the Susco ruling terms. It was also noted that the accounting to bring us in compliance was actually done before our current CFO took on, so the prior administration had actually taken care of that. Next on my list was, it came to my attention, or thought, that I didn't have a good understanding of the dynamics of goings on over at the school. So I actually had a meeting with Superintendent Dave Hallman today, actually. He is one dedicated individual. We had a very long discussion. I was very interested to hear a lot about what's going on over at the school, some of their challenges and pain points, and some other systems and programs that they have going on there. We did discuss possibly formalizing a communication channel between the school board and the council, possibly as a liaison member of the council that attends school board meetings and whatnot. But that's still in discussion. But that's one of the things that I did today. And finally, It's been noted or brought up to me, and I've actually noticed, that there are a lot of light bulbs out along on the boardwalk. And I spoke with DPW Superintendent Mike Campbell, and we actually now have a lightsout@belmar.com email address, and we encourage everybody to, as soon as they see a light out, send an email in with the location, and it will be handled expeditiously. If it's a JCP&L light, they're going to submit a work order, which, by the way, they have a current work order open to fix 30 JCP&L lights within town, but they're actively repairing those. The boardwalk lights, they actually have a program 3 times a year, and also when reported. They go out and they test all the lights and fix whatever's broken. But I guess a number of those lights up there have LEDs, and sometimes there's parts, and those have to be put on order. So they try to clump those together when possible. But bottom line is, if you see a light out, call DPW, call JCP&L, send in an email to Lights Out, and it'll get addressed as soon as possible. And I'm going to ask our multimedia director to post all of this information in the Lights Out email address on social media, so that everybody can make use of it. And that's my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilman McCracken?
So ironically enough, and we didn't coordinate this, I also had a meeting today with Mr. Hallman at the Belmar Elementary School about improving the front entrance to that building. As I reported in the last meeting, there's a local contractor who is willing to volunteer his time and that of his crew to improve the front entrance of the school, including the sign, lighting for the flagpole, and just the front entrance in general, with irrigation and a new paver walkway and new plantings. So Mike Campbell, me, Mr. Hallman, and his facilities person, along with the local contractor who wants to donate this time, met this afternoon and reviewed that project, and it's really exciting. I think it's important that the school board and the school and the town have an open communication. I'm very pleased that Councilman Carvelli is working on a plan to have a liaison improve that. But I really think this is a really good project that goes hand in hand with the town improving Main Street and the visible appearance of that southern end of town, as well as working with the school. So that is really cool. The contractor is writing a plan so that Mr. Hallman can actually show those to the school board members at the meeting, and the labor and all the materials will be donated for that project. He showed some pictures of some of the materials he plans to use for that, and it's absolutely stunning. It'll be very nice. I mentioned briefly when we were talking to our engineer, Mr. Avakian, about communication, and I know Councilman Wan is going to talk about this in her report with the community policing program, but we certainly do identify the fact, and it's been brought to our attention, that some of the questions that are raised in this meeting, even though we may get back with that person individually, there may be other people who are watching or who are in the audience who have the same question, but don't ask it because someone else has already had. So we're aware of that very constructive comment, and we'll make an effort moving forward in future meetings to make sure that any open items that require a public response, we do that openly in this meeting. I think it was a great idea. The Shade Tree Commission meets next week, Wednesday, 10/23, at the library. And then I just have 3 other reports because I get around town, a lot of people are asking about what are we doing to save taxpayers money? What are we doing to streamline operations? What are we doing to be good stewards of your taxpayer dollars and be fiscally responsible. So I have two reports this evening that are just want to share with you. I reported last month about the streamlining that we've done in the Department of Public Works. We're doing more there with less. I think you had my quote backwards, Mike, in the I don't know, maybe I said it wrong, but we're doing more with less. And for the 2018 year, we had 71 part-time police officers. And this year, in 2019, to date, we have 53 officers, a reduction of 8 part-time police employees. And I feel that personally as a citizen, compromising public safety is something that we're all concerned about. But again, the police department is doing less with more. At 71 last year, new administration this year, and we're down 18 part-time employees and still keeping our residents safe. We also have a report from the Belmar Marina, a sales item summary. This is dated January 1 through October 15th, 2019. Additional revenue to date, as of today, October 15th, in the marina is $68,869.84. The marina is sort of one of many of the sub-departments that are operated by the Department of Public Works. So I was very happy to see that part of that number is because we have 4 less employees this year working in the marina, as well as other revenues being up and overtime greatly reduced on a town-wide level. So thank you very much, Director Campbell, for that good news. And the last thing I have, I guess I should maybe walk down and be a member of the public for public session, but this is my personal comment on the public session. You may see Resolution 188. That's providing for the insertion of a special item of revenue into the budget of the Borough of Belmar pursuant with such and such chapters. And this is as a result of our Belmar Fire Marshal, Ryan D'Elia, being awarded the Monmouth County Fire Prevention Inspector of the Year Award. And as a recipient of that award, he was given $1,000, which was turned over to the borough. So please join me in congratulating him on receiving the publicly recognize him and thank him too. So that's my report.
Thank you. Councilwoman Wong.
Thank you, Mayor. We have an ADA meeting this Thursday. I'm going to meet with Peter Avakian, and we have a few properties to look at to see that they are ADA compliant. There have been some concerns about a few. I'm not going to mention what they are, but we'll be looking at them to make sure they are compliant. The community policing program, we've had a meeting with all the zone chiefs, and now we're going to have a meeting with everybody, with block captains and the zone chiefs. We are compiling all the information that we received over the summer. There are some kinks. Don't forget the program is new, but it has worked. We're going to answer a lot of questions and start with the winter now, which is another program that we have. We still have problems in the winter, but they're different than the summer, maybe a little more on the quiet side, but nonetheless, there are some issues that we need to look at. So that will be taken care of. There is a senior luncheon tomorrow at DJ's, and I just want to remind everybody, Halloween's coming. Candy, yeah, I know. And I just want to remember that we have a Halloween parade and contest, and it's going to be on October 27th at the gym, and there will be a trunk and treat in Piano Plaza also for the kids, so that'll be fun for the children. It's always a great time of year. I had a request, and this is regarding the makerspace down at the library, and
Greg and I had a conversation about this last week, about what the maker space is and what they have. So I just want to read this to you from him. It's a little something about the maker space in the fall program. They have from coding to sewing to audio and video editing and production. And there are lots of great programs to choose from on that. And whether you have a project for school or business, a passion or interest, simply a desire to learn new skills, the Makerspace gives you the equipment, space, and support you need to achieve it. While we were having this conversation, I had talked to Greg about this. For those of you who can't sew like me, I mean, I can barely get a straight line, and you can make balances for your porch. You know, they cost a couple of $1,000s to put up a balance, but we have the Makerspace, we have the machine, and all you have to do is sew four lines and put a doweling in, and you have awnings on your porch, and you can save yourself a ton of money, and you can use our Makerspace. So please, think about it, take advantage of it. And I think that's all I have to report for now. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Council President Brown. Welcome back.
Thank you,
Italy
Mr. Mayor.
and
New Orleans. It's good to be back.
It's nice to
For
be
all my
retired.
travels. Yes, nice to be retired. Although I am going to miss the Halloween parade, I'll tell you that. I'm probably not going to be here for that either. I did make it back to go to a couple meetings last week. I got to go to the Harbor Commission meeting on Tuesday night, and we did see those numbers. The marina has done better this year than it has in quite a while. We're still not full. We're not selling out all our slips. And in that being the case, we're not looking, the Harbor Commission is not going to recommend raising any rates or getting rid of any discounts. We offer discounts for, early payment. We offer discounts to Belmar residents. They're all going to stay there. But I can tell you, Chairman Lynch is like, he's really chomping at the teeth to figure out a way to get more money out of what we do with the marina, because that money goes right straight into our general fund. Unlike the beach, the money from the marina can be used basically for anything once we make it. That being the case, they're looking at, in particular, looking at gas prices. They want to double check. Right now, the closest place to buy gas for your boat north of here is the marina in Atlantic Highlands. They're charging like $3.50 a gallon. And there's another place down by the Manasquan Inlet, that's the closest place south. We have to check that price, but we're not charging anywhere near $3.50. We could easily raise that price a nickel, a dime, 15 cents. Still be the lowest one around, and definitely bring in some more money. So that's something that they're going to be looking at, and I'm pretty sure they're going to definitely recommend doing that. The Environmental Commission had a meeting last Thursday night, and it was a very, very special meeting. What they did was they invited all the environmental commissions from the surrounding shore towns to attend a meeting that was held at Taylor Pavilion. Usually their meetings are downstairs in the library. It was very well attended. There were over 20 people there. Representatives from environmental commissions from Lake Como, Spring Lake Heights, Bradley, Neptune. There were people there from the Shark River Cleanup Coalition, and there was somebody from Manasquan there too. It was really good. What they did was they, rather than try to work out a more complicated agenda, what we did was we watched the presentation that Krista Sperber held that was referred to before. She's the newest member of the Environmental Commission. She's also a member of the New Jersey Organizing Project, which is dealing with helping people who are still displaced from Sandy. There are still people that have that issue. And she's very, very well versed in flood insurance and what the possibilities are as far as rates and what the possibilities are, as far as water sea level rise, which we definitely, it's the second time I've seen the presentation. It's just as thought-provoking, best way I can describe it, as the first time I saw it. I think it would be really good if we could meet with Mr. Avakian and his flood planner and see what we can do, because the main thing we want to try to do is get that score to be better so that our rates will go down, and explain to people what they can do as far as keeping their flood rates lower. One thing that I did learn that I'm not sure everybody knows, if you don't have flood insurance and you need to, because of a disaster, you need to get help from FEMA, FEMA will help you that time. But if you don't get flood insurance after that and you're flooded again, FEMA will not help you. That was eye-opening to me. So that's something to be considered. One of the attendees, Bob Dewar from Manasquan, brought in a pamphlet. He's working with something called Leave Only Your Footprints. They are basically kind of a nonprofit. They sell these stickers on different sizes for different things. Avon's doing it, Manasquan's doing it, several other towns are mentioned in the brochure. And basically the idea is you put these decals on stuff at the beach just to remind people, you know, pick up after yourself, really, basically, pick up after yourself. We could even put them on the ashtrays to make people realize they're not supposed to throw their butts on the ground. That would be really good, because that's the problem with cigarettes. That's why we banned them. It isn't because of the smoke, it's because of the litter. There was a great article in the Asbury Park Press just last week about recycling. Recycling is becoming an issue because, like many people, I assumed anything made of plastic, you threw it in the recycling bin and it went and got recycled, and that's not the case anymore, if it ever was. Just a couple of things here. We don't recycle plastic bags. When you have a bottle, take the cap off. Don't put the cap back on the bottle and throw it in, because, believe it or not, what it says is they're a hazard, because when they go to crush the bottles, the caps fly off and hit people in the eye. Put your eye out with that. Don't do that. Several different things. Don't put shredded paper out. The main problem is with recycling. The main problem with the plastic recycling is third world countries, particularly China, they're just not taking our garbage anymore. They're not taking it, and I don't think they were ever really recycling it correctly anyway. So what's happened now is we have no place to put the plastic. You can recycle plastic number 1, plastic number 2. Look for the number on the plastic. It's usually on the bottom or someplace where you can find it. Number 1s have to be basically like bottle shape, drinkable form. Doesn't have to be like a narrow top like a water bottle or a soda bottle, but it has to be like a bottle form. And all the other plastics, the hard shells that you get your eggs in, we went to Jolion's and got great sandwiches the other day in the plastic clamshell. None of that is recyclable. It's got to go in the garbage. It kills me to do it, but you can't put it in because it's just going to cost us money. We're going to pay to take it over there, and then they're not going to use it. We're paying, you know, by weight, so we don't want to do that. If you are going to recycle something like your salad dressing bottle, which you can definitely recycle, rinse it out, because it definitely saves time and it saves money. Anything that they have to do extra at the recycling place is going to cost us money. And then one last thing, the Environmental Commission is working on getting a grant. We're looking at the Nature Conservancy right now to finish paying for plantings at the beach. A couple of members in particular, Diana Blue, has been doing some really great work. That application is going to go at the end of the week, but in the meantime, we have some money in our beach budget for dune maintenance, the same money we've used the last couple of years. Director Campbell has worked with the DEP, and the DEP has approved us to put another planting in between 14th and 15th Avenue. One of the things we found in researching the grant is we found a supplier for these plants that is so much cheaper than what we used the last 2 years. Incredibly so. And looking forward to getting that going. That should happen around the middle of November. And that's the end of my report. No, you can't recycle shredded paper. Nope.
I just learned something.
Here's my kid. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Council President. My report, I've attended a lot of meetings and a lot of events since our last meeting, but the one that I want to report on is George's son, Lambros, for becoming an Eagle Scout. So, and he really deserves that because, you know, it takes a lot of work to become an Eagle Scout, and to have one from our town is really special. So congratulations, George.
Thank you,
And Lambros.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
The other thing I want to report on, I said that I'd come up with the numbers for the mayor's ball. After everything was paid, through all the proceeds that come in, we made $22,000 for recreation. So, between our CFO, Mike Campbell, Barry Juveau, they're going to go through what we need immediately as far as equipment for everybody, and they're going to take a look at and see how to spend that money. I don't get involved in that. That's what those guys do. So we'll look at some of the equipment that we need to upgrade and how we can use that money. But yeah, I was happy with the sponsor. I want to thank all the sponsors, and I want to thank everybody that attended because that's who made it happen. So thank you, everybody. We did all of, I think it was Councilman McCracken and Councilman Carvelli. We attended the 125th anniversary of Hook and Ladder. They had their party at Shillelagh's the other day. So, and that was a great event, and I want to congratulate those guys for putting on a, you know, nice event. So that was good. Can't think of, you guys covered a lot of stuff. Yeah, so that'll end my report, but the main thing was I wanted to Lambros, great job. So, all right, we're gonna move on to public session on the consent items on our agenda. Yes, in the back.
Anita Pecorelli, River Road Department. I see that you're approving special events for next year. I don't know if I missed it or not, but I thought there'd be a balance sheet for the Seafood Festival, and times, like you said, you would say if we made money or if we didn't make money.
I know we reported on the Seafood Festival where we made $64,000.
Okay, so I missed it.
So we had that report. I don't, did we complete one on San Gennaro yet?
We have not.
Yeah, so that one's still coming.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyone else? All right, seeing none. April?
Can I have a motion to close the public session?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Can I have a motion to approve the resolutions as listed on the consent agenda?
Motion. Second.
Councilman Vaughn? Councilman Brennan?
Yes.
Mayor Walsifer?
Yes.
Councilman McCracken?
Yes.
Councilman Carvelli?
Yes.
All right. We have no ordinances on, so public session. Anybody else speak about anything, public? Yes.
Gerald Buckfusco, 409 Fifth Avenue. This seems to be my special topic. The RFP for the municipal building and parking lot redevelopment. Within that document, there are 3 dates. There's a schedule of things that the developers have to meet. October 7th, the final proposals for responses were due. Did we get any responses?
I believe we got 2, but we're under review they were sent to our attorney for review.
Okay. Is that something that's a public record?
Well, they will, they're not yet, they will be, certainly.
When would they be a public
After I
record?
finish my review, I think within a couple of weeks.
Okay. Well, that leads me to my next question. October 17th to the 20th, it says interviews and presentations will be made.
That's going to be put off because I still have to finalize the review. That's going to be put off for a few
Okay,
days.
so then in other words, the November 1st borough proposal selection and redevelopment designation, I assume that's going to be put off too?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so will there be a new calendar put out for those items to be
I'll talk with the administrator, we'll set something up for sure.
Yeah, can we post that on the website so everybody will know? I don't think the RFP is posted as of yet either.
It's still in for attorney review. Once,
It's what?
You mean the RFPs
Actually,
themselves?
The
No,
RFP itself,
they're not to be posted publicly until we finish our review.
but they were posted in the newspaper.
They were
The
posted.
RFP is posted in the,
Not the
not the
response.
proposals, the request.
Oh, excuse me,
Yeah,
I thought
the
you meant-
request for
I thought you
proposal.
meant the response.
No, I think I had asked once before.
Yes, the reason why that's not posted on our website is just like for the reason why we don't post bids is because if we have to make an amendment to it, we need to know who has obtained a copy of it so they can all be notified of the amendment, which is why the notice says they have to contact the office to obtain a copy. That way we have a record of who received it. So if there are changes or amendments, we can notify everybody, so it's a fair process.
And we couldn't do that by having a request for proposal, and then when it gets amended, post another one and say amended.
But there's no guarantee that they'll see it.
Well, no, you're responding to them, directly. If I'm a developer and there's an amendment, you're sending me the amended copy.
Right, no, that's what we do, but we don't post it on the website because we would have no idea who downloaded it off the website. So we wouldn't be able to notify those people.
Want your
Well,
competition
that
to know
doesn't
what
make,
you're doing?
that doesn't make sense to me, though.
Wait, I think what she's saying
You
is,
know what I'm saying?
if
It
we
doesn't
post
make sense.
something, right, and somebody downloads it,
Right.
and then it gets updated and reposted, there's no way for us to know if all the people that download.
It's the same way, though, if I walk into the building and I get a copy of it, right, on day
Sign your
one.
name for it.
Right,
Sign your
and
name.
then I post it, then I take it.
But then you
Post
provided
a
your
new one.
information to get it.
But we'll have your information that you received one either physically or by email, and then we could notify you when there's an addendum.
Well, can I request one through Oprah when it gets amended?
What, can you request what?
Can I request RFP, an amended one, if and when it gets amended?
After I do the review, then we're going to have interviews, not open session, interviews with the applicants. Is that, I'm not sure.
No, I'm saying I got the original RFP through an Oprah request.
Right, well, then you would have been notified if there was an amendment. So there was no amendments to
There's
it.
been no amendment to it.
There's been no
So
amendment.
this will be an amendment, won't it?
You change the
change of
dates.
the date?
Change of the date, yeah.
All right, but we will, I'll certainly make it public that what the dates are going to
Okay,
be.
you don't know what form that will take. Is it going to just be something that will be posted on the website, or will it be?
Sir, I'm going to speak with the administrator, and we're going to set the dates. I don't know personally how April, Borough Clerk's office handles that, but it'll be handled as it always is, with great transparency, and everyone will know.
Okay, other than that, no further questions.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Linda.
Linda Sharkus, 404. As we talk about doing road repairs and improvements, I think it's important, might be important to notify people if their street is going to be one of them that's improved. So if they haven't made sewer or water improvements, they may seize the opportunity before the new surface is put down on the street. Because a lot of us, well, I just had mine changed out, and a number of people still have the old sewer and water system.
Well, that's one of the things the engineers will look at with DPW and the water department. Before we do those things, I mean, that all the water sewer systems have to be looked at, because once you do the pavement, you don't want to tear it back up. So I think in most cases, like 12th Avenue, they did a lot of sewer work before that was paved over there. And the engineers really took a good look at that, right, Mike?
Yes, when we do have a road, for instance, 13th was the last long one we did. We do go house to house with notification telling people 4 months out, 6 months out, if you're going to plan anything, we are putting a moratorium on any of the opening of the road. So do it now or do it in conjunction with our road openings as we come by, so you can save a little bit of money if it's already open. But it is done as a routine. We don't want any surprises, and your surprise would be our surprise, because once we put down the pavement, we don't want anybody obviously opening it up and making more potholes after we've done all that. So again, that is absolutely something that's done with every road opening. And once then again with 12th, in the areas that were done, we went house to house. Everybody was notified it was coming up, getting closer, getting closer. If you're doing anything, no. bids by, okay, no bid.
Okay, thank you, that would be great.
And I think the engineer also mentioned about having a long-term road management plan. So as part of that, and
He
kind
did not mention noticing the neighbors, and that's, you know, it's a long-term planning
Yep.
process for them because the cost is so significant.
right, but what I'm saying is this will be in conjunction with that, and so people will sort of know like where their roads land on the priority list and whatnot, maybe not exact
Maybe
dates or
not.
schedule, but as it gets closer, like Mike said, you know, people will get noticed.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Mr. President. John, keep your hand on the mic. Hey, who's that one up there? Right.
And don't ask me any questions because you're the mic.
Jake Kramer, Fourth Avenue. I just wanted to comment. I guess it was tap into email, and it gave a web address, and I downloaded the 2019 Annual Water Quality Report of Borough of Belmar Water Department. Okay? This is all good news, by the way. Apparently, he had no exceedances of contaminants for another year. I note that that we've changed over just recently from the borough's 4-well system that we utilized during the summer, and now we're using New Jersey American water. I guess the question I have here, it reports that New Jersey American water is fluoridated, and I'm assuming that the town does not fluoridate our well water during the summer.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Oh, okay, good. So the school kids are getting fluoridated and strengthening their teeth if they're drinking the water in the school. There was good advice here on, as you know, lead is a big problem in New Jersey, and there's a good educational statement within the report about lead. And basically, it's not the lead from the purveyor of the water, it's basically local plumbing, which is the problem with lead. The one thing that I did note, and it seems of the contaminants, that sodium, and it's a secondary contaminant, you just won't drink water if it has too much salt in it, and we take in enough salt with the food that we eat. But there's a recommended upper limit, and it appears that we're getting very close to that. 50 is the recommended upper limit, and we had a range here up to 48.6. So 50 is the recommended upper limit, and we're coming very close to that now. And I'm assuming that the source of that is, of course, we're right next to the Atlantic Ocean. And this problem of saltwater infiltration, I know it's a big problem down in Cape May and more in South Jersey communities, but they're having saltwater infiltration into their aquifers. I guess what my question is with respect to reliability is our agreement with New Jersey American Water Company. If we had to shut down our wells in town here, would they be able to supply us sufficient water? That's really...
The answer is yes, and the timing is immediately.
They could?
If we have a problem in the summer, something happens with one of our wells or one of our systems, they would be on immediately. We have alarms with American Water. They monitor our water all summer also, even though we're on our own. And if we had a problem, they would immediately switch over to American Water and start our billing that way.
Okay. Have they indicated any, payer, what do they call it? Take or pay contracts? Do we have to take so much water from them every year? Is there a limitation on that?
You mean to turn it on additionally, or for just, is that why we switch over?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the contract that we have with New Jersey American, but do they maintain that if we had a need for additional water, that they certainly could supply it?
They certainly can supply it, and the billing of it will be over my head. I don't do the billing for American Water. But again, we are allowed to switch right over, and they would start monitoring or metering how much we took from their system in order to bill us, and they do bill us.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Good report.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
Hi. I'm Maria Ronzanaro, 1246 Pine Tree Way. I just had a question, and maybe it's for Mr. Campbell, for the sewer and the connections, making sure that the sump pump doesn't go straight into the sewer. Has that, there was talk several months ago, years ago, about, actually we had the education that people were going to have their smoke come out. Did that actually end up happening? Did we do that? And did that program start, or is that program going to start?
It was one of the steps we were going to take down in the K Street area to find out what that was. In lieu of that, we cameraed and we dye tested. The problem with the smoke testing, again, we're willing to do it even on a larger basis when we get to it, but the smoke scares people, and you have to have firemen outside and everything else, because all of a sudden, if your house was hooked up to our sewer, and you're automatically just pouring it out. When we smoke test it, the smoke's going to fill your house. So that's why we would try and use a colored smoke, whatever it was, so you don't get too panicky. But again, it's a last resort to try and help, and find out who's hooked in. We can do it with cameraing, and you see who's got an extra line coming in, and you can do it with dye testing. So we're trying to go the less severe route. But again, in the future, if we have to do it, we certainly shall. It's something we work out with our now county best Ryan DeLay, to be with us with the fire departments. And we had a plan going through with the county and the state being there. So we were ready to do it, but we did have good news and good breaks on the K Street line. So right now, we did not have to follow through with that more harsh way to find things out.
Excellent. And then I guess the only thing I'd say is that if something does happen needing education, that perhaps we could do with the community policing, having the block captains, let people know on the block, just so in case somebody, which John does a fantastic job, but in case someone isn't watching or going to our website, that they actually have direct education on what's happening. Okay, thank you.
Yes, Jim.
Jim Bean, 61216. For some background, I heard Asbury Park, a corporation actually bought a block and then put a liquor license on the entire block, with Beach House Brewery buying a liquor license. I'm guessing the whole building gets a liquor license. I just want your thoughts on would every restaurant in there use that liquor license? And
Do we have a transfer on license that I don't know about? No, but they haven't transferred anything yet.
But did they, I heard Beach House bought a liquor license.
They're in the process of buying Jack's Tavern, but they haven't asked for a transfer of license.
If they would the entire building get the liquor license with the restaurants, or just the brewery would ever be able to use it?
Well, we'd have to take a look at it, but it would be said,
That would be part of their application. They'd have
part of
to
their
tell us what
application,
they want.
yeah. You could limit it to wherever you needed to limit it to, if they're gonna do that, but they haven't come to us yet with that.
Okay, but it's up to the town to limit, or?
Yeah, just like you put everything, you put restrictions on their license, just like every license they have.
I was
If
just
they have
worried.
a square footage area that they can serve.
Yeah, Asbury allowed it. I was just kind of worried here that, if it's allowed once, then you just start getting bigger and bigger and bigger bars, adding one more and more. That's all. Thank you.
Wait, Jim, are you worried about that, or was your question legitimate about how it works? Because I would think with 3 years being on the council, you would know the answer to that.
Well, actually, it's the structure is what I always thought it was, the property that they're on.
The application that's submitted the application that will be submitted, I guess, includes like a footprint of what's gonna be covered.
Right.
So we'll know it at the time.
And so my question was, if they put the footprint at the entire building of the brewery, meaning the restaurants as well, they're legally allowed to do that, and then any restaurant that
Well,
came
it's
in.
just
will have
like,
a
you
liquor
know, that
license.
if somebody wants to have outside dining, they have to come back to this governing body to allow them to have liquor outside on their outside dining part. They just can't do it. It's the same thing with every liquor establishment. You can't just say, hey, listen, I own a 10,000 square foot building because I own the whole building, that's where I want to have liquor. No, it's up to the governing body. We control
It
that.
could affect the parking, it could affect a lot of,
Sure.
so we're really talking in the abstract right now.
Sure, okay.
I think what you're asking is, if Beach House Brewery moves a liquor license to the current location, will the council grant them an extension of premise for the rest of the units in that building?
Well, I don't expect you guys, I mean, there's a lot more involved. I just want to make a point that Asbury Park actually did a whole entire.
Asbury Park's a whole different animal. They do
I
everything
agree,
there.
and I just want to point out that,
They got a tunnel.
you know, something to look at and to think about, that I didn't want all of Belmar to become one big, just like Asbury did, that's all I was saying.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, April,
Have a motion to close the public session and adjourn the meeting?
make that motion. Second.
All in favor?
All right, hopefully the game's still on. Thank you all for coming out tonight.